Okay, up next, we're ready for our next keynote speaker, the last keynote speaker of today's session. Mr. Carl Youngberg is here. I read his bio, and I was so fascinated by so many of the things that he's done in his career. He went from Peace Corps-ing it in Honduras to high-end retail sales at Saks Fifth Avenue in New York, to Neiman Marcus in Dallas. One of his philosophies that he writes about in his book is that nothing that you have done in your career, and I'll add in no matter what it was, is wasted, and that everything matters and everything has value. Will you please join me in welcoming Carl Youngberg?
Well, should I sing? I don't know how to follow that act, you know. Anyway, it's good to be here with you again. I've spoken to PMI many times, so it's fun to be back. How are you all doing? You know, speakers don't really love speaking to people just after a meal. You know that? So if your head slumps down, we'll know what it is. My topic today is trust in the workplace. So it's not, I am a marriage and family counselor. I did that, for a short period of time at the University of Missouri, and decided I wasn't right for that job when I told a client to just get over it. So I don't know what else I can say about that. So anyway, let's get going and let's see what we've got here. Oh, there's my little song. I'm going to start with a question. The world of project management, whom do you trust? At your tables, I'd like you to quickly say, whom do you trust or who do you trust in your workplace? You have 1 minute. Okay. We're going to practice a rule here that what we say here will stay here, okay? So shout out, who do you trust in your workplace? Just somebody, shout it out. Yes, sir. Can't hear me? I can't hear you. I'm sorry, what?
He said who is increasing the volume.
Oh, that would be Hui. Okay, they want the volume up.
Is that right? Yeah.
Volume.
No. The volume.
Is that you? God bless him. Sparky here will do it in a moment. We'll see what he does. So what kind of things did you come up with? I'd like to hear. Somebody, who do you trust in the workplace? I've worked longer than any of you. Come on, this is a two-way deal, or I will come around and call on you particularly. So this lady right there with the blonde hair, and then the green guy right next to her. So you first. You.
Me?
Yes, you.
I'm new at my company. I trust my manager.
You what?
I'm new at my company. Right now, I trust my manager.
You trust your manager. Was that part of the decision process to take the job?
Absolutely.
How quickly that love affair can end. But have you ever felt that elusiveness of the gap between I do and then I will? You know. So, Mr. Green Shirt, stand up. Tell us who you are.
Derek Benhouse. I work for Marlowe 26. I trust my colleagues who say it like it is. Great. Yeah.
Well, now she shows up with a microphone. Okay. I want to get somebody over here. Mr. Blue Shirt, right there. That'd be you. Stand up and tell us who you are and who do you trust? Oh, he's smart.
I'm Randy from Texas Instruments. And so we thought one person is our stakeholders. We better trust them or we're not going to get our job done.
And you won't get any more money either, would you? No, very good. Okay, over here now, guy with the blue shirt on right there, that would be you. Yes. Stand up.
Hello. So I work for a company called as Synergy.
What's your name? Tell us your name.
My name is Amit. I work for a company called Synerzip, and I trust my team and my boss.
Wow. And how did you achieve that?
Well, I didn't have to do much to achieve that. I just started placing trust, and I think being open and transparent, and probably that has been the strategy, you can say.
Very good. Well, thank you
Yep.
very much, Ahmed.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to move on and talk more about trust. That's our topic for today. One of the things we're going to come up with is our own trust account. How do you make deposits in your trust account? Do you know what I mean by a trust account? It's kind of a, who said yes? Somebody said yes. Oh, yes. What do I mean by it? Just shout it out. This woman needs a microphone. Where did my microphone people go? I think they all went out to eat. Stand up and say that again. That was perfect.
Trust account is just like the bank account. You must have to have some deposit in it. It's either you build it up or you deplete it.
Yeah.
And once it's get depleted, it's very hard to build it back up.
Is that from experience?
Oh yeah, very much so. I got burned a few times before I learned that hard lesson.
It's a very difficult, it's like savings account. Oh, I'll put this money right back in, and then sometimes we get waylaid. The trust account is something that you need to, as an executive, need to have a good sized deposit in there. And we'll talk a little bit about how to get that as well. I thought you might appreciate this hiring cartoon. It says, I'm not supposed to say anything, but you really aced this round of the interview process. Does that sound familiar in the interviewing process where everybody stabs you? Who loves project managers? Who? Wow. I almost married one. I hate to ask what stopped you. Oh, good project manager will move ahead with that. Okay. Being a project manager is a challenge sometimes, because what do you do that people may or may not respond positively to? What do you have to do? You have to get people, well, we're going to go through a list, but basically, what do you have to get people to do for you to be successful? What would you say? You have to what? Accountable. All those promises you make have to come through. Yeah, somebody else over here had a thought too. Meet deadlines, absolutely. Yes, okay. We'll come back to that. Let's get started. Building trust. And this is going to be a very interactive session, so I warn you. I told somebody yesterday who said, oh, I was going to make it very interactive. And the first thing he said, I hate that. So, you know, as a former therapist, you can tell me how you feel. So just don't do anything deadly. All right. I'm going to quote some today from Patrick Lencioni, who wrote the book, 5 Behaviors of a Dysfunctional Team. Later, a company that I work with brought him back, and he did an upbeat version called 5 Behaviors of a Team. But what I want you to look at is which one of those categories on that screen most apply to where you've been or where you are. Just shout it out. On the red one, which one is a factor? What's that? Avoidance of accountability, where fingers point everywhere else. Okay. What else? What? Lack of commitment. And that's usually accompanied by someone who says, "Oh, we love that," and then walks away. There is an issue of amnesia in the corporate workplace that needs to be addressed. Okay, what else? Okay, perfect for today. Okay, absence of trust. What else? What's that? Yeah. Yes, okay. Fear of conflict, yes. What else? Avoiding accountability. Right. That sounds like that was a hard lesson to learn, was it? Don't cry, it's okay. We were at Neiman Marcus every year. We would have a thing where we would, in September, we would all march over to the library, and in the auditorium, we would have a very upbeat speaker who would stride on stage with music accompanying him, and he would say, "We have a program that is going to change your business." It's a absolute, and our chairman of the board would be there on stage grinning and doing all this. And then he went through about 15 minutes. It was going to change everything we do for positive. How the economy was, because we always got a coffee cup as a result of that. Anybody else ever get a coffee cup to mark the beginning of an exciting new venue? We would get a pin that had the logo on it, and if things were good, we got a T-shirt. If things were not so good, we didn't get the T-shirt. You know, start off and we would have success stories, blah, blah, blah. And it was usually about customer service. But within probably a month, it was completely forgotten. People just, if you looked at that, what about this? Oh, no. I always remember American Airlines did that. They said, we're going to push the accountability down to the people at the gates. And if they have to make a decision to put somebody to do something for a customer, they're going to do it. And that lasted about 3 weeks, and then they had hysterics over because people were doing that. They were taking care of the customer. So, and those of you who fly a lot can probably appreciate there's been. This seems to go in and out. Does it? Is it?
Let's try a
I
swap.
think so.
Let's try a swap. This one seemed to work pretty well earlier. Sing a quick song.
Is that better? Is that better? Good. Okay. Okay, let's switch to the other one, and let's see what it says. This is a cohesive team. This is the hallmarks that you see normally in a group of people that are working together. Which one of those have you witnessed and experienced in your own work? Just shout it out. I just want to hear. Commitment. Lasting commitment. Accountability. What was that? Conflict, okay. Okay. And what happens with conflict in the workplace? Stand up so everybody can hear you because you're really good.
Run into. Oh, sorry. If it's managed correctly, so third time's the charm, right?
Get it right this time.
Yeah, really. If it's managed correctly, it can be one of the most positive things you can do. I did it once. It's hard for me to manage conflict. I'm not natural at it, but I had a really adversarial relationship with this one guy, but it was a positive thing. We were designing something, and we both knew that we came out with something far better than either one of us would have done individually. I'd work with a guy on a team anytime, but it was conflict. It was just, we both had opinions, and we both thought we were right.
Were you uncomfortable with the conflict?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else uncomfortable with conflict here? Okay, that's the whole session then for today. Apparently, managing conflict, we'll do that. Okay. Anybody else? What else do you see up there that is part of your daily work? Just shout it out. Nothing? Nothing. I hope there's something up there. How about results? Do you manage your results? Yes, say yes. Okay, thank you. All right. We're going to dig this in, but I want you to just notice one thing. The foundation for all of those achievements is trust. And that's at the first thing that we do at the bottom. So we're going to see about that, and we're going to see how we get to it. I love this because it says, I don't know if I can read it, confidence among team members that their peers' intentions are good and there is no reason to be protective or careful around the group, okay? So in essence, teammates must get comfortable being vulnerable with one another. And that's a word I'm going to come back to, is vulnerable. What does that mean to you in a business setting? Just shout it out. I might get off this podium pretty soon and come walk around. But tell me, what do you think vulnerable is in the workplace? Being honest, okay?
Open.
Open. What else? Being wrong. Absolutely. Leaving your ego at the door. What's that? Asking for help. Okay. You know, all that is part of your job because you have to manage all of those aspects in what you do. So let's see about that and move on. The person I'm going to talk about a little bit today is Patrick Lencioni, who wrote the book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So let's see what he has to say. Vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. That's a very powerful statement. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weakness. When you have those things, truth and courage, they don't feel right sometimes, but they are right. So, about that.
So let's go ahead and get started and talk about the first behavior that we have to master to make our teams great. And that behavior is trust. Now that sounds obvious, doesn't it? You're thinking, no duh. Is this really anything new? Well, the thing about trust that's important is most of us think about trust as what I call predictive trust, that we have to be able to predict one another's behaviors. Well, any group of people, any two people that have known each other for a long period of time will have predictive trust with one another. They'll be able to predict one another's behaviors. If I say something, you know that this is what I'm probably going to do. Or if you tell me that you're going to do something, I know what's actually going to happen. I can predict your behavior. That's not really trust when it comes to a team. The kind of trust that I'm talking about on a team is what I call vulnerability-based trust. Vulnerability-based trust is the kind of trust that comes about when human beings on a team can and will say things to one another like, I don't know the answer, I need help, I think I made a mistake, or even, I'm sorry, I think I did something that was wrong. When they can be completely vulnerable about who they are, mistakes and warts and all, it creates a dynamic on a team that is just invaluable. And we all know how powerful this can be if we think about teams we've been on that didn't have vulnerability-based trust. And we've all experienced that in our careers. Once I worked with a team that was struggling, and they asked me to do a 2-day offsite for the team. But before I did that, they said, come observe our staff meeting so you can see kind of how we interact with one another. And so I went to their staff meeting. I noticed something very interesting, kind of funky, if you will. There was this one person on the team that whenever she spoke at the meeting, every time she said anything, the room would go silent. There'd be this awkward pause until someone changed the subject and they moved on to something else. Every time she spoke. So they'd be talking about competitive analysis and what they needed to do to fight off a threat from her competitor. And she would say, well, this is what I think we should do. And people would go silent. And somebody would change the subject. They'd be talking about something else, strategy or something. And she'd say, well, this is what we did at my last company, and this is what I think we should do. Silence. It was the weirdest thing. So after the meeting, I went to one of the people on the team, and I said, what is going on? Why does nobody ever say anything after she talks? And they said, because we've learned that whenever we disagree with her or have a different idea than hers, she always defends herself. She never acknowledges that we might be right. And we finally decided, why bother? So we thought that was interesting. So a little while later, we did our 2-day offsite with this team, and we went off, and during the first day of the 2-day offsite, we talked about trust and vulnerability and the need to open up and be open with your teammates. And we also talked about strategy and tactics and everything else the team was doing. And that night, we went to dinner. Before the second day, we went to dinner at an Italian restaurant where we had wine with dinner, which is the great elixir of truth on many teams, as you know. And this woman, after having a few too many glasses of wine, stood up at the end of dinner, raised her glass and said, kind of like a toast, said, hey, you guys, we've been talking about trust today, and I just want you to know I've been married for 10 years now, and I've just barely learned to trust my husband this year, so I'm not going to be trusting you guys anytime soon, if ever. Cheers. And we were like, cheers, all right, you know. And we thought, okay. I went outside with the team leader, And we said, okay, this is the problem. This poor woman has some deep trust issue that probably dates back to her childhood. So we just had to work and try to get her to open up. Well, eventually this woman left the organization. And do you know that the very next meeting they had there, without her, it was a completely different team. You would have thought they had swapped out every member of the team for a new one because it was completely different, the dynamic. And the moral of this story is this: if just one member of a team cannot be vulnerable, it spreads like a disease to the whole team. Just one member. So we have to ask ourselves, and everybody's going to come to vulnerability different ways. Depending on your disc type, it's going to look different. But you got to know that everyone is committed to getting there, and that will make the difference on your team in building trust.
Okay, at your tables, discuss this for a moment. What did you think was the message that he shared? You have 1 minute. Okay. I'm going to pick on somebody now, and let's see. I'm going to pick on this table over here, this lady in blue. Would you stand up? Listen. That's good.
Hi, yes.
Tell us what you're discussing at your table. Okay.
Hello, my name is Becca Alexander. Do we clap or something? Just keep talking?
We have a question on the floor.
I was asked to share what we were discussing at our table. My name is Becca Alexander, and we had two examples where the leadership, it was where there was not a trust factor from the leader not trusting the team in one situation, and in the other situation, the leader didn't accept criticism and feedback, maybe, and so that was challenging for that team. And once that leader left, the team changed because of that individual no longer being there. And in the other case, they're waiting for the roadblock to leave.
It's traumatic waiting. Okay, so what else? This gentleman right here. Stand up, tell us who you are and what you all came up with.
My name's Sean Martin. I'm from Oracle Corporation and the Cloud Operations Group. And we came up with one person that is not vulnerable and open to trust can ruin an entire team, essentially. They can infect the rest of the team too. So it's not just, it could spread to other people if it goes on long enough. And my thought was that if you're not able to provide corrective action for that person somehow, then they need to either be moved to another team or out of the company.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, tough job. Now this table back here was the loudest table in the building, so I'm going to go back there. Yeah, it's them. Okay. You think because you're far away that a professional speaker doesn't hear. Okay, so I don't know which one's the ringleader, but I think it's you. There you go. There's the microphone. You go first. Well, you go, and then we'll do the other. Okay, tell us your name.
Sarah Sage.
Well, now you're quiet. Say it again so we can all hear. It's Sarah Sage. There we go.
Yep.
So tell us what you all came up with.
Well,
Hold this up.
I just told a story about how in my project it was difficult for everyone to sort of trust the PM that gets dropped into the project because it went off the rails, or it was decided that it was so complicated that they needed a PM, whereas other projects were fine. So we were at a deficit from the beginning. So, and I was just saying that if they had, had the time just to have one person tell everybody else what to do, and that was actually advantageous to them, they would have done it. So I had to sort of prove my value before really gaining their trust.
Yeah, tough.
That was
Okay,
it.
pass it over here to Big Mouth here. Come on, Donna. No, yeah, you do. I could hear you over there, Donna, so spit it out.
No, I'm Donna, and I was just explaining that I'm the newest member to my team. I've only been at this firm for about 6 weeks, so they have to build trust, learn trust with me, being there, delegating orders, and to learn who I am and that I'm responsible and will get the job done. So I'm building trust right now in this season.
So this is a good topic for you, then.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah, I would think it would be, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. Give her a round of applause, everybody. Okay, now it's your turn to have an very interactive session. Well, I'm going to tell my story. I had a job. I was director of Epicure at Neiman Marcus, and that's the gourmet food department. And so we had the idea that it would be great to develop a gourmet trash bag, all right? As you can see it there, it's in red, had Neiman Marcus on it. And we wrote the copy. My friend Pat and I wrote the copy, and we kind of got carried away. We said it was for the better class of trash. We said it would increase your home's value when it was at the curb, just all that kind of stuff. Well, it was a huge success. People were loving them. They were giving them as gifts. They were wrapping packages in them. And it all did wonderfully until the sanitation department from San Diego refused to pick them up because they're red, the same color as toxic waste. Whoops. I made Time magazine for that, I'll tell you. So, and so I tell this story, and it was interesting. I was speaking actually at Neiman's at their IT department, and because it was that, and I said, okay, here's the story of me. So I told the story, and afterwards, one of the participants came up to me and he said, wow, you really made a big mistake. And I said, what do you mean? He said, doing that bag. I said, no, the bag was not the mistake. There was a big mistake, and the mistake was that I didn't involve other people in the decision. And that's really a very fatal flaw, that when you don't involve other people who have the knowledge. I mean, one of the bag manufacturers probably would have said, that's a cute idea, but I don't think you want to do that. Do some other color, whatever. So I learned from that. And the point of this, why I'm sharing this with you right now, is that if you can be willing to share a story about yourself of something that didn't work out quite like you hoped, that's when you build trust. And for Donna, who's in there new, tell people, don't come in every day, God, you wouldn't believe what I did yesterday. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about building trust. And where you share, one time we tried this, and the results were not what we hoped they would be. That kind of a conversation. And the best bosses I've ever had are people who do that routinely, comfortably, and they often laugh about what they have done. So that's why I do that. And I put this in here to show you the humanity of all of us, that we all make mistakes. But moving on is what we've got to do. And you've got to encourage your people to be willing to make mistakes. We said that in fashion. The markdown racks, those were experimentations. That was stuff we tried that was new or different. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that's what markdowns are for. So, you can get rid of the stuff that didn't work. We had sweaters with arms that went down to the floor, but things like that. I loved it when we did the Australian fortnight. Somebody misspelled Australia, and they printed it all up on T-shirts and aprons, whatever. And we had to pitch all that stuff, burn it, really. So, that's where we open the door to conversation. Okay, a trust checklist. Do people constantly question your expectations of them? What do I mean by that? What do people do? Do they question you? Yes? No? We'll do another one. Would most people describe you as someone who is reliable? Yes or no? Yes, okay. And do the majority of team members underperform at the task you ask them to do? Those are the critical issues that we have to do, because you have to not only have ideas and a plan, but you have to get buy-in by the people who are involved at all levels in the company. So we say keep calm and trust your project manager. So we're going to see how we do it. I'm going to show you a video now of a team that seems to not have trust. Here are the people. You're going to see them all in the video. And what I want you to do at your tables is figure out who has no trust in this group. Okay, is that clear? So you'll see it. And you can, one person doesn't get involved at all, and the other are very involved. So let's see what it says.
So I got a call from Harris this morning. Said they were taking their business to another company. And the only reason I could get out of them was that they were expecting a higher level of service from us. So does anyone have any idea what happened? Nobody knows anything?
There was a delay in one of their shipments, a glitch in the software, one time, maybe a couple times.
I mean, this is your account. I'm assuming they said something to you?
Look, I didn't know. It's not like we have time to have a heart-to-heart with every single client every single day.
Didn't anybody complain or notice even?
Nobody from Harris called until the order was 2 weeks late.
So they didn't notice their shipment was late for 2 weeks, and they canceled their account the first time they called?
No. It was after the 7th. They canceled after the 7th call.
They called, but they didn't have their order number, they didn't have a SKU, they said they'd call back, but they were returning calls at like 10 at night.
See, I didn't know anything about that.
We always put that stuff in the logs.
I don't have time to check the logs.
So do you need someone to help with your caseload?
No. I mean, if they're a mind reader, we can't be expected to know every single time a client gets worked up. Unless they're going to tell us, it doesn't matter how many people are working for us, right?
Okay. At your table, look at these 5 characters and say which one had the low trust or whatever you think is the problem here. Okay? You have 2 minutes. How's this going? Good. Okay. All right, let's hear it now. Who's responsible for what in this group of people? Shout it out. Who do you think is responsible? Charles. Charles. And why is Charles at fault? He's disconnected. Okay, Rebecca says disconnected. Is that true? Okay, she said all of them. Well, they all have their part, yeah. It's like Murder on the Orient Express. They've all stabbed the person, yeah. What about Sun Mi? What about her, the little goody two-shoes over there? Is she at fault at all? And what's her issue?
It doesn't sound like she went to Charles. So it sounds like Charles is the relationship manager, but Sunmi is the one taking a complaint call, and she didn't go talk to him. So I think there's a communication gap there.
Okay. So between them, okay? All right. Good thoughts. Anybody else have thoughts on little Sun Mi? What's that? She's covering up? Okay. Well, that'll go far in business. A good sweeper, cover it all up. How about you? What did you think? Stand up, tell us who you are.
I'm Travis. I work at G6 Hospitality. And I think Carlos is not doing well by just sitting on the side and not providing any input.
Whoa.
So
But he looks so innocent.
those are the ones you have to worry about.
And what about the issues with Charles and Sun Me?
Like you said, the lack of communication is definitely relevant, and I think Charles is just completely overwhelmed.
Okay. And what happened when she said, "Do you need help?"
He said no, but then he second thought and was like, yeah, maybe.
What happens when you ask for help in business?
You don't usually get it.
You're young. You'll have a lot to learn, I think, yeah. Okay. So you see a lot of culprits in that order. Does that look familiar at all? Has anybody ever sat through a meeting like that, a search for the guilty, where you go through? Yeah. It happens all the time, every day in some places. Okay, let's go on. Now I'm going to show you the team with some different behavior. And I want you to pinpoint what the behavior is in this group.
So I got a call from Harris this morning. Said they're taking their business to another company. And the only reason I could get out of them was that they expected a higher level of service from us. So does anybody have any idea what happened?
Yeah, they had 2 pretty big shipments that were delayed quite a bit. We went back and forth with them, but to be honest, it was a mess. I should have been more on top of it.
Well, I mean, this is your account. What'd they say when you asked them about it?
I have to admit, I didn't know this was going on. We're just swamped.
And I should have kept you in the loop. I'm sorry.
Was there anything that I can be doing so that I can keep on top of these things?
Well, we always keep a record of these things in the logs.
You know what? I knew that. I should be checking those.
So do you need someone to help with your caseload?
Maybe. Something's got to change. There's got to be a way to proactively track these things as they happen. Is there any way that I can pull you into that conversation to get your perspective on it?
Absolutely.
I have never heard an audience response like what you all just did. Oh, thank heavens. And the prize will go to one of you who has to work with this team. No. At your tables, take about 2 or 3 minutes and discuss who changed, how that happened, okay? 3 minutes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to go over here to that table right there with the orange shirt and this gentleman that's turning around and just halfway sat up. Now stand up, and here comes the microphone.
Slowly.
Tell us your name.
My name's Mark Rushing with Fujitsu.
Okay.
We want to trade Carlos for somebody else.
Oh, poor Carlos. Now he's going to have a low esteem issue, so I don't know what we're going to do.
At least he didn't pile on. That was nice.
He did not pile on.
Charles was a lot more forthcoming. Sun Mi is very helpful. We thought that Chad was not changed a whole lot, other than he did say he would help when asked. He
didn't volunteer, though.
He didn't volunteer anything. Sun Mi and Charles obviously did something. Perrin, she doesn't seem to know her people as well as I think she should. So.
Ooh, insightful. Okay, good
well,
job.
It was the group.
It was the group, okay.
Yes.
Thank
We had
you.
a great group of people here.
Okay. Susan, I'm going to have you stand up for a minute and share some of your observations about some of these things we're seeing.
Thanks, Carl. Well, what we were just talking about before Carl called time on this one was we were saying that for project managers, these videos are very relatable because we've been in both of these meetings before. And that a good project manager learns how to spot what the issue is, where it's at, and what to do about it. And that's part of what makes us successful as project managers is thinking behind the scenes of where's this person coming from and what do I need to do to bring them into the fold.
Let's give her a round of applause. Susan will be running for office again. I can tell that. She's just past president. Yes, sir.
Should Karen have been active and brought Carlos into the conversation and not let him just sit there and be silent?
That's a good point. What would you do?
Engage him, ask him his opinion. Once they're having the discussions, it's like, Carlos, how do you feel about this?
And a good way is to go around the table and just have everybody, what are your thoughts on this? How could we do this better? What happened, what we were like, what we are like now? Obviously, they were more successful at this point, but it was a stretch. Yeah, Carlos was kind of a cipher in a way. He just sat there and didn't contribute much. What about Chad this time? Did Chad jump in? Did he? What's that?
I don't think he was as open. The first time, he didn't want to talk about it initially, but then admitted that he had actually gotten 7 phone calls. This time, yeah, he was going to help out, but he really wasn't contributing to what was the issue.
But I think that was Charles' way to shut the topic down, so he was just, help me, so he won't say that it was 7 times.
Well, did Chad have the ability to spot a hot potato when he saw one? Don't you think Search for the Guilty would go on pretty soon in this environment when the client quits, calls in and says, we're leaving you? I think it'll happen. Okay, good job. Anybody else before I go on? Okay. Yeah. Yes. What?
Carlos is somewhat innocent. Everybody have an idea in the American way of thinking. You don't know his nationality. Maybe he's from different country, and his way, maybe he's lower seniority. Maybe he's new manager. Maybe he's raised by a Taiwan mom, tell him don't speak. Let other people talk first and show respect, and didn't contribute in American way, but in Asia way is you let everybody contribute first, and you put your input when you are asked.
Okay.
So maybe he's innocent.
I think he's single too, Everybody loves Carlos. How can we rescue Carlos, okay? But your point's a good one. Very good one, okay?
One observation. Sorry, my name is Palan. One observation. Why is this coming from parent to all of them? Why wouldn't Sunmay or Charles bring it up to parent, assuming parent is their line manager?
Okay. A healthy group would do that. They would call together. We always said, in business, that so many times we would wait for the boss to be there to have a meeting. And a healthy group will call the meeting on their own and say, we've got an issue that we need to resolve. And if the boss gets there or doesn't get there, the process is already in operation. Good one, good one. Okay, your time in the tent is not over, I can tell you, okay. Now, so we've got tables, so that's fine. We'll skip the 5, just be whoever's at your table. I'm gonna give you some questions. I want everybody to respond to these questions with your table group, and let's see what it is. Your personal history. Number 1, where did you grow up? Number 2, how many siblings do you have? And where do you fall in the sibling order? Number 3, what was an important or unique challenge of your childhood, of being a kid? Now, we're not talking about trauma or anything like that. I will see you later if I need to, debrief. But this is just about your experiences as a child. And it could be a traumatic move from one culture to another. It could be lots of things, loneliness or total engagement. So at your tables, get started. Everybody has to share.
Where'd you go? Do you know Carol Marlowe from Paris, Texas? I don't think so. I always wanted to go. I don't think I ever did, actually. I know. Well, I moved and moved on. Where did you grow up?
Okay. I hear some stories coming out, and we're going to start with you. Tell us your name. Hold on, come on.
I'm Janae Posley.
So I grew up, you want me to go through the questions? I grew up in the Bahamas. They have some interesting stories going on.
Yeah, they're making a lot of it up. Go ahead.
I grew up in the Bahamas. I have two siblings, a brother and a sister. I am the middle child. Yes, I kind of got lost in the mix there. An important or unique challenge of my childhood was actually moving here to the U.S. in the 11th grade. I finished my senior year here, so had to leave lots of friends and got used to a new culture and a new way of doing things. But here I am.
Very good. Let's give her a round of applause. Okay, over at this table here, which has been ignored heretofore, I'm looking around the table. People are averting their eyes. They're looking elsewhere. And we're going to do you. Stand up. Tell us who you are and what came up.
Hi, my name is Dustin, and what came up for me or for the rest of the group here? Oh, okay. I grew up in Irving, and I have two other siblings, and I'm the middle child. And the most important or unique challenge of my childhood, or of being a kid, living probably up to the expectations set forth by I have an older sister who's very accomplished, so it's probably that for me. So grades-wise and sports and everything. So.
What went on your table?
What went on at my table? Actually, just a lot of discussion about where we grew up. Shefali is from India. Ryan is from Oklahoma City. Noel is from West Texas, or Abilene. And this gentleman actually just joined us. And so, where are you from, sir? I'm from Dallas. He is from Dallas. And what is your name? Neelavkar? Neelav. Okay, Neelav is from Dallas. So.
Good job. Doesn't he do a good job? And now we'll do you.
Okay. I'm not going to stand.
No, stand up.
You're going to make me stand. I grew up in Aledo, which is west of Fort Worth. I have a younger brother. What was an important or unique challenge of my childhood, I think my parents tried everything out on me first, and then they were much more lenient with my little brother.
You still have the resentment on that?
No, I got it.
Is your younger brother still alive? Oh, good. Just wanted to check. Excuse me. Give her a round of applause. Terrific job. Okay. Now I'm moving past this table. And, oh, no, there's one I want to see. That would be you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Minh Pham. I grew up in Vietnam. I've been here for over 30 years. I came from a family of 10. I'm the 7th in the family. So that made me a very good PM, right? I learned to respect, especially the cooperation part. Unique challenge of childhood, I would be similar to her situation that I came to the United States when I was 13, and when Vietnam lost to the communist regime, and so I came here with our family with just clothes on our back. But been a wonderful life since then. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Whoa! And one more, I think we'll do. No, was it be you again? No. Okay, do you realize what you just did in that process? Yeah, you became vulnerable. From leaving Vietnam, leaving the Bahamas, all of these stories, you know, having older brothers, younger brothers, older sisters, not being the golden child. Was anybody a golden child here? You were, she raised her hand. Oh my God. Oh. Kathy, that's not a self-appointed title. Do you know that? It's true. They always say that too. It's true. Okay, good job. What were your feelings doing that? I know you don't like to talk about feelings, the other F word, but what would you say would be your feelings about sharing your story? What's that? Nauseating. Oh, Rebecca. No, you were so good. You lied with, was very comfortable telling those stories. Anybody else? What were your feelings sharing your story? Vulnerable, that's the key word. What would be the reaction if you started a meeting at your company, at your next one, with this simple exercise? It might be what you want. Copy it down, write it down, and say, okay, let's do this. All right, we're going to move along. What this is really doing is building confidence. We talked earlier, I think Donna said, that was you, Donna, yes, said she had to build her team. Is that correct? You have to build your team. What's that? Well, build their trust in you, and you build your trust in them. So that confidence that comes from that what you agree to is going to get done, is really why you're there. So that's a big part of it. Here's some of the payoff that we get. The focus on trust was a part of a study at the University of Calgary. Trust was a factor in all the projects that they worked on. Alliances, distributed teams, team effectiveness, time to market, cost reduction, report usage, allocation, progress reporting, or value engineering were all places where they looked at the factor of trust as being a successful part of that. And so it was throughout all of the things that they did. Here's some of the things, or well, you can tell me, what are some of the things that you work on where you can see trust being a factor? Because I want you to walk out with something in your head. Vulnerability would be one. Trust would be the other. Has anybody changed your own definition of if you're trustworthy as a result? Are you better than you thought you were? Yes? No? I'll call on you if you don't answer. You know that. I'm older than you, I know. That's what you have to do. We find that when we look all over the country, that every time that we are working with others, that where we see a trusting relationship, and this is not trusting, say, oh, they'll accept anything. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about where people trust each other. I'll give you an example. If somebody slapped something down on my desk at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday that needs to be done by Monday, that's not trustworthy. Do you agree? I know I'm the only person that's ever had that happen. Has anybody here ever had that happen? Yeah. EDS, when Ross Perot was there, the people had this habit, I guess, that Fridays they would say, oh, we've got a new client, we need to do the pitch, and it's due Monday morning. And that meant they all, had to, but it went on every week. So if you do it once, that's okay, but doing it every week is a false kind of thing. Schedules and estimates are more reliable, more accurate when there's trust, because you can feel like what somebody says is what's going to happen. So we look at that and we say, okay, we are, and this is for Donna, but for all of us, we're more likely to be accepted as a manager of a project if others can trust us to do our jobs well. Does that make sense to you, Donna? What's that?
Sorry, thank you. On the point you just raised about the example of receiving something dropped on your desk on Friday, can you help me understand where you're going with that in terms of trustworthiness?
Okay, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked that. A trusting organization doesn't dump work on others. Does that make sense? I see vigorous nodding here. Yes. They work together. If there is a big project that needs to be accomplished, that's where you come together and say, how can we do this? That was the example that went on when finally when she said, "Do you need help?" And the second time he said, "Yes." That was a huge jump for him. And for all of us, so this Friday afternoon you can test it. We'll arrange to have a big project dumped on your desk Friday afternoon, and it's due Monday morning. How would you like that? I don't think we'd like it. Does that answer your question?
Not just my sense. I think the way I kind of see that is it's being disrespectful and perhaps not valuing your time, but I don't know if it's not being trustworthy or trusting. Just my...
Well, okay, that's a good question. Who would like to respond to that? How about, okay, yes, stand up.
So I worked with someone a few years ago that it seemed like every time I was leaving the office, it was like, whoa, hold on, let's talk about something. And then it was another 2 hours worth of work before I could leave that day. Instead of having the conversation earlier in the day so I would have time to fit it into the schedule during normal work hours. So for me, that became a trust issue, if that kind of adds to the conversation. Does that help? Well, it was a behavior issue, in my opinion, where it became a pattern of behavior. And so it's like, okay, let me try to get out of the door at 3 o'clock, knowing that I need to stay till 5, instead of leaving at 5 to know that then I need to stay till 7. So it wasn't a matter of my ability to get the work done. It was their time management for things that needed to be done. So then that became an issue between myself and that person, in that it became a disrespect issue, which then became a trust issue, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Let the record reflect he does not do that. Okay. Thank you. Give her a round of applause. Yeah. All right. So what we've covered today, is there somebody else who wants to talk back there? Or is there a bingo? Okay, there we go. Do you think they could have gotten one more table in this room? I don't think so. I think they've about outgrown this space. Here we go.
I'm Gerald Stanford with UT Southwestern. I would say it's a management issue because the processes and things should be in place where it goes through an orderly process where there's not this surprise. Oop, need you to work 2 more hours or all the weekend. If the process were there, then it would have been put in the correct queue and ran in a managed or well-managed way. So,
what would be your response to people who traditionally bring you things like that late that are due?
Well, what I'd be saying to myself is this is just an example of poor management, and irresponsibility. And then you'd not trust them after a while, like, you can't depend on them to bring it to you in an orderly manner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Give them a round of applause. Great job. Okay, I've got a bedtime story for you that we'll close with. This is one of my favorite stories. You can repeat this. An American fisherman, an American project manager, was standing at the pier of a small coastal Mexican village when a small boat with just one local fisherman docked. Inside the small boat were several large yellowfin tuna. The American complimented the Mexican on the quality of his fish. "How long did it take you to catch them?" he asked. "Only a little while," the Mexican fisherman replied. "Why don't you stay out longer and catch more fish?" the American then asked. Is that a perfect American response there? Yeah. Is that you? No. The Mexican fisherman said, "I sleep late, fish a little, play with my children, spend time with my wife, stroll into the village each evening where I sip wine and play guitar with my friends. I have a full and busy life." The American scoffed. "I have an MBA from UTD and I could help you." You should spend more time fishing, and with the proceeds, you buy a bigger boat, and with the proceeds from a bigger boat, you could buy several boats. Eventually, you would have a fleet of fishing boats. Instead of selling your catch to a middleman, you would sell directly to the consumers, eventually opening your own can factory. You would control the product, processing, and distribution. Sounds good so far, yeah. You would need to leave this small coastal fishing village and move to Mexico City, then LA, and eventually New York City, where you will run your expanding enterprise. Fishman says, but how long will all this take? And the American quickly said, 15 to 20 years. Then what? The American laughed and said, this is the best part. When the time is right, you would announce an IPO and sell your company stock to the public and become very rich. You would make millions. Millions, then what? Then you could retire, move to a small coastal fishing village where you would sleep late, fish alone. So that story is about us. You know, what do we say to other people? What do we do? How do we build value in our organization? And I believe that the core is trust. I think trust is not isolated. We don't talk about family stuff, but you know, your children will know when you're trustworthy. Your spouse will know. Others will know in your family. So I think that's really kind of what we look for. Now, he had a question. Anybody else have a question that you'd like to get answered from the world's smartest person here? You're Q and my A, so what is it? Anybody got a question about what we've talked about today? Yes, sir.
Sometimes you have to make a judgment between people you trust that are goodwill, and then the same person may not be really good at something.
I think that discernment is the reason you're there, to be honest with you. You've got a reason for your job. And you've got to be able to say and figure out who does what and why, and how well do they do it. And that's really the core thing of what your job is. The project manager is a crystal ball reader. You know, you have to look at everything. You're not happy with that answer, or you want a different answer?
No, that's a great answer. I just, because I'm always, what I do is pretty technical sometimes. I work with a lot of really good people, but you have, as a project manager, I have to make those decisions, and a lot of times I have to wind up making the decision, and you just have to be real careful with the data that you get and make sure you make the right decision.
Okay, good, good. Somebody else? Yes, ma'am.
We have a question here.
My name is Mai Tran. I would like to ask you and other people, if somebody had broken your trust to pieces, how many chances and opportunity should you give that person to regain your trust? And what does it take for you to trust that person again?
Wow. That's Dear Abby.
I would have to take your losses.
The PMI, we have a Dear Abby column, you know. I'm calling in for someone else, you know. Are you going to respond to hers, or you got to, yes, stand up and tell us your response. Here, I'll give you my microphone because the rest of them are back there doing their nails. Okay.
That is very difficult. As a manager or as a project manager, that puts you in a very difficult situation, but the truth is that people get into positions, I think, where they're not exactly qualified to always do the work. And so as project managers, we keep our eyes on that, and we trust QA and testing. We trust the process to have its checks and balances. But when you have someone who has all the good intentions, you hope that that's the feeling behind it, but they don't actually have the ability. For me, it's happened to me a couple of times. You have to have a really solid corrective action plan. I worked very closely with HR to really look at, okay, what's the work they're doing? Do they have the right experience? Is there a training program we can help them get that will correct it? Or is there more training internally that we can do? But if there's not, it's having that extra oversight to really track it, but it's communicating really clear expectation on what their work is and keeping your eyes very close on it. And laying out exactly what the expectations are so that when you don't meet them, then you have the ability to take that next step if you can't keep the person. So I think just protecting the company and is also important too.
Okay, doing everything you can. I also call that sting of the whip, which is not a very pretty sound, but it's that people need to sometimes be corrected in what they're doing. And, you know, I have to tell you a story, that not to diminish our HR people, because I speak to the HR chapter at Fort Worth and Dallas. I worked with a woman who was the vice president of the shoe division, big business at Neiman Marcus. Well, she got married and she was off to, she wanted to plan a family. And she found that when they had 7 a.m. meetings all the time at the job, she had no time. She had no time to get pregnant, to be honest with you. You know, she was like, wow, you know, this is just an incredible amount of time. So she finally decided, she and her husband decided that it was time, they wanted to start a family, and that she was going to leave that job. So she went to the HR person and her boss and told them the story. And they said, you wait, give us 24 hours. We'll be back with a solution. So the next day, she was very excited. The next day, she went back to see them. And they said, we've got a plan. Neiman Marcus is going to pay for you to go to time management. That is a good example of what not to do, okay? If you ever want a classic, you know, we'll pay for your own time. She quit on the spot and walked out and said, no more. So that's what we have to do. Sometimes if they don't hear us, whatever, we have to do it. You have one more? Oh, it's you again.
It's me
Okay.
again. I'm just curious about the role that Carlos had to play in that video. Did we wrap up on that?
Okay. If you're lonely and like to meet him, we can arrange it, okay? Well, I want to thank you all so much for letting me come and be part of your thing. Thank you.
And thank
there
you, Carl.
are. Okay. Have a great afternoon.
Now, Carl, before you go, we have a token of appreciation for your time here. I think the group really appreciated your presentation style. We have a Texas-sized cutting board that I understand you can paint red and chop hazardous waste material on. But actually, during the break, somebody told me you can use this to chop vegetables on, too.
Imagine that.
Congratulations, and thank you so
Thank
much.
you.